Most people lose battles long before they lose opportunities, not because they're weak, not because they're unintelligent, but because they keep playing by rules that their opponents abandoned a long time ago. Here's a disturbing truth that nobody likes to admit. The world isn't always fair, and not everyone fights with honor. Some people manipulate, some deceive, and some smile to your face while quietly positioning themselves against you behind closed doors. And the question is, what do you do when you're the only one playing clean? Do you keep being honest and hope fairness wins? Or do you learn the game that's actually being played? Because whether you realize it or not, every workplace, every friendship, every negotiation, and every social circle has its own hidden power dynamics, and those who refuse to see them often become victims of them. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something about human nature that still makes people uncomfortable centuries later. He saw that power rarely belongs to the most talented person in the room. It often belongs to the person who understands people best, the one who recognizes motives, the one who spots manipulation before it happens, the one who sees the board while everyone else is staring at a single chess piece. And before you misunderstand this video, this isn't about becoming cruel. It's not about turning into a liar, a manipulator, or someone who takes pleasure in hurting others. It's about something far more important: protection, awareness, strategic intelligence. Because the moment you understand how manipulation works, it loses much of its power over you. Think about it. Have you ever trusted someone who later betrayed you? Have you ever watched somebody less competent rise above you simply because they knew how to influence people? Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling confused, guilty, or defeated, only to realize hours later that you had been psychologically outplayed? If so, you're not alone. Most people experience these situations repeatedly throughout their lives without ever understanding what's really happening beneath the surface, and that's exactly what we're going to uncover today. In this video, you'll discover some of Machiavelli's most powerful insights about dealing with difficult, manipulative, and deceptive people. More importantly, you'll learn how to protect your mind, your position, and your future without sacrificing your values. Because when people play dirty, naivety isn't virtue, it's vulnerability. And by the end of this video, you'll see human behavior through a completely different lens. Once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Let's begin. Number 1. Stop assuming intentions. Start reading incentives. This single shift will save you years of confusion. Most men spend their lives asking the wrong question. What did she mean by that? What was his intention? Maybe he didn't mean it that way. Machiavelli would tell you that's exactly why so many people end up manipulated, betrayed, and blindsided, because meaning is invisible, incentives are not. Think about the last time someone disappointed you. Maybe it was a friend who disappeared the moment you stopped being useful. Maybe it was a woman who swore she valued loyalty, then walked away the second a better opportunity appeared. Maybe it was a business partner who spoke about brotherhood while quietly protecting his own interests. At first, you probably searched for explanations. You replayed conversations, you analyzed words, and you tried to understand feelings. But here's the uncomfortable truth. While you were looking for sincerity, they were calculating outcomes. Most people don't wake up thinking, how can I destroy someone today? That's the fantasy naive people believe. The reality is colder. People usually do what benefits them, and then build a moral story around it afterward. That's how manipulation often works, not through obvious evil, but through self-interest wearing the mask of virtue. And that's where most men lose control. Because they judge behavior through intentions. Meanwhile, experienced players judge behavior through incentives. Watch what happens in a workplace. The colleague who constantly talks about teamwork suddenly disappears when responsibility appears. The manager who preaches fairness promotes whoever makes his life easier. The friend who says you're like a brother becomes strangely unavailable when you need help. Different situations, same pattern. The words change, but the incentive remains. Machiavelli understood something most people never learn. Behavior follows reward. Not principles, not promises, not emotional speeches. Reward. What gets rewarded gets repeated. What becomes costly gets abandoned. and everything else is just decoration. And once you understand that, human behavior becomes terrifyingly predictable. Suddenly, things start making sense. You stop asking why someone betrayed you. You start asking what they gained. You stop asking why someone lied. You start asking what truth would have cost them. You stop asking why someone became distant. You start asking where their attention is being rewarded now. See the difference? One mindset creates confusion, the other creates clarity. And dirty players rely on confusion. They need you trapped inside stories. They need you debating intentions. They need you hoping their words matter more than their actions. Because as long as you're trying to understand the performance, you're not paying attention to the transaction. Here's what Machiavelli would want you to understand. The most dangerous manipulator is rarely the loud liar. It's the person whose incentives quietly move against you while their words remain perfectly clean. The person who keeps you waiting, keeps you uncertain, keeps you hoping, keeps you emotionally invested while they keep all their options open. You've met people like this before. Everyone has. The mistake is thinking more conversation will reveal the truth. Usually, time reveals the truth, pressure reveals the truth, consequences reveal the truth, and incentives reveal the truth. That's why powerful men observe longer than others. They don't rush to accusations. They don't demand explanations. They watch. They track patterns. They study what people do when nobody is watching, when rewards change, when pressure arrives. Because incentives never lie, people do. And here's the part most men miss. The moment you start reading incentives instead of stories, you stop taking everything personally. The emotional fog disappears. You stop feeling betrayed, you start feeling informed. You stop chasing answers, you start adjusting access. You stop arguing. You reposition yourself. That's real power. Not controlling people. Controlling your exposure to them. Machiavelli never said trust nobody. He said understand first, engage later. The moment you stop asking, are they a good person? And start asking, what does this behavior reward? You leave the world of illusions and step into the world of leverage. Number 2, control access before you try to control outcomes. This is where most men lose power without even realizing it. They become obsessed with results. They argue decisions. They chase explanations. And they negotiate outcomes. But by the time you're fighting over the outcome, the game is already over. The real battle happened long before that. Machiavelli understood something most people never see. Power is rarely decided at the level of conclusions. It's decided at the level of access. Who gets your time? Who gets your attention? Who gets your emotional energy? Who gets close enough to study you? And most importantly, who gets close enough to influence you? Think about it. Have you ever met someone who seemed harmless at first? A coworker who just wanted to chat. A woman who wanted to talk every day. A friend who constantly checked in and wanted updates about your life. At first it felt normal, maybe even flattering. Then months later, they somehow knew exactly which buttons to push. Exactly what made you react, exactly where your insecurities lived, and exactly how to make you explain yourself. That's not coincidence. That's data collection. Most manipulation doesn't begin with aggression. It begins with access. Dirty players understand this instinctively. They don't immediately try to control your decisions. First, they study your patterns, your habits, your frustrations, your loneliness, your need for validation, and your fear of rejection. They sit quietly while you reveal everything voluntarily. And here's the brutal part. Most men help them do it. Because they mistake availability for value, they think being constantly reachable makes them important. It doesn't. It makes them predictable, and predictable men are easy to manage. Look around. The man answering every message immediately. The man always available, always explaining, always responding, always accessible. Most people don't respect him more. They respect him less. Because human nature has a dark rule most people refuse to acknowledge. What is constantly available is rarely valued. What requires effort attracts attention, and what requires intention earns respect. This is why manipulative people push familiarity early. They want casual access, frequent communication, constant updates, and emotional oversharing disguised as connection. Not because they care, but because familiarity lowers resistance. And once resistance disappears, influence becomes effortless. Watch how this happens in real life. A colleague bypasses professional boundaries and starts making everything personal. A woman starts demanding immediate responses while offering less and less in return. A friend begins expecting access to your time simply because they're used to having it. At first, it seems harmless. Then one day you realize something uncomfortable. They aren't respecting your boundaries because you've trained them not to. Machiavelli would never tell you to make dramatic announcements. He wouldn't tell you to post quotes about boundaries. And he wouldn't tell you to explain yourself. He would tell you to do something far more powerful. Become selectively unavailable. Quietly, deliberately, and without apology. Quietly. Shorter conversations, less access, fewer explanations, more mystery, more space. Because the moment people lose automatic access to you, their true character emerges. Because the moment uncertainty starts bothering you more than it bothers them, you've already entered their frame. Now you're chasing, now you're reacting, now you're revealing, and every explanation you ask for gives away information. Your priorities, your fears, your emotional investment, and your priorities, your fears, your emotional investment, and your pressure points. Meanwhile, they reveal nothing. This is why dirty players love emotionally reactive people. Reactive people expose themselves for free. One uncomfortable silence and they start talking. One delayed reply and they start explaining. One misunderstanding and they rush to correct it. They cannot sit in ambiguity, and because they can't sit in ambiguity, they become predictable. Machiavelli understood something dark about human behavior. People reveal the most when they feel uncertain. Not when they're comfortable, not when they're confident, but when they're unsure. Watch what happens when you don't immediately react. When you don't explain yourself, when you don't rush to fix a misunderstanding, the other person starts filling the silence. They begin talking more, explaining more, justifying more, defending things you never accused them of. Have you ever noticed that? Someone suddenly starts giving long explanations for something you didn't even question. Why? Because silence creates pressure, and pressure exposes what words normally hide. Most men make a fatal mistake. They believe every misunderstanding must be corrected immediately. Machiavelli would disagree. Sometimes the misunderstanding is more valuable than the correction. Because what people do when they think they've fooled you tells you everything. Some become respectful, some become curious, some become angry, and some become entitled. Pay attention to that reaction. It reveals more than months of conversation ever could. And here's something most men learn too late. Protecting your emotional access is even more important than protecting information. People can't do much with facts, but they can do a lot with your triggers, your fears, your frustrations, your emotional wounds. The moment someone can predict your emotional reactions, they gain leverage, and leverage is the foundation of control. This isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming difficult to manipulate. There's a difference. A weak man gives access hoping to be liked, but a powerful man grants access selectively because he understands its value. Machiavelli believed power grows where dependency shrinks. The less others can rely on your immediate availability, the more intentional every interaction becomes. Control access first, and outcomes will take care of themselves. Number 3. Let others reveal themselves while you stay unfinished. Most men destroy their leverage because they can't tolerate uncertainty. They need answers, they need closure, they need to know where they stand. And that need is exactly what experienced manipulators use against them. Think about the last time someone pulled away from you. Maybe a woman suddenly became distant, her messages got shorter, her energy changed, and something felt off. And what did you do? You probably wanted clarity. You wanted the conversation, the explanation, the reassurance. You wanted the uncomfortable tension to disappear. That's human nature. But Machiavelli would tell you something most people never realize. The person who needs closure first usually loses control first. The co-worker who thinks you didn't notice his manipulation. The friend who thinks you haven't seen the disrespect. The woman who believes you're still completely emotionally invested. Watch them. Don't interrupt the performance. Let it continue. People become careless when they believe they've gained an advantage. That's when masks slip. That's when patterns emerge. That's when truth becomes visible. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most men don't seek closure because they need information. They seek closure because they need emotional relief. There's a difference. Information creates power. Relief creates dependency. One makes you stronger. The other makes you easier to control. Dirty players understand this instinctively. That's why they rush situations. They want immediate decisions, immediate reactions, immediate commitments. They manufacture urgency because urgency kills observation, and observation is dangerous to them. A man who observes quietly is difficult to manipulate. A man who reacts immediately is easy to predict. That's why staying unfinished is so powerful. You don't lock yourself into positions too early. You don't reveal conclusions before collecting evidence. You don't commit emotionally before seeing patterns. You stay flexible while others expose themselves. You stay calm while others become impatient. You stay silent while others fill the room with information. And eventually something interesting happens. The people who were acting suddenly become exhausted. The people who were pretending become inconsistent. The people who were manipulating become careless. Because maintaining a performance requires energy. Truth doesn't. Machiavelli understood that power belongs to the man who can sit comfortably in uncertainty while everyone else rushes toward premature conclusions. Let conversations breathe. Let people talk. Let patterns repeat. Let masks slip naturally. You don't need immediate answers. You need accurate answers. And accuracy belongs to the observer, not the reactor. Number 4, neutrality is camouflage. Emotion is a beacon. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths about power. The people who can read you the fastest are rarely listening to your words. They're watching your reactions, your face, your timing, your tone. That slight change in energy when a certain topic appears. That extra enthusiasm when a certain person texts you. That flash of irritation when somebody challenges your status. Most men think they're hiding these things. They're not. And the dangerous people in life know exactly where to look. Machiavelli understood something that sounds almost unfair. The moment someone can predict your emotional reaction, they gain influence over your behavior. Think about that. Not control. Influence, and influence is where control begins. Maybe you've experienced this before. Someone makes a subtle comment that shouldn't bother you, yet somehow it stays in your head all day. You replay it in the shower. You replay it while driving. You replay it before bed. Meanwhile, the person who said it has already moved on. Why? Because they found the emotional handle. And once someone finds the handle, they don't need force. A small push is enough. This is why experienced manipulators rarely attack facts first. They attack emotions. They don't challenge your logic. They challenge your ego, your pride, your fears, your insecurities, your desire for validation. Because emotions create movement, and movement creates mistakes. Look carefully at arguments. The moment a man becomes emotional, he starts revealing information. What hurts him, what threatens him, what he desperately wants others to believe about him, what he fears losing. His entire psychological map starts appearing in public, and most of the time, he doesn't even realize it. That's why neutrality is so powerful. Not because it makes you cold, but because it makes you difficult to read. Imagine sitting across from someone who cannot be emotionally steered, someone who doesn't become defensive, doesn't over-explain, doesn't rush to prove himself, and doesn't react when provoked. What happens? People become uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, because most social influence depends on feedback, and when feedback disappears, uncertainty grows. Have you ever noticed how some people become more aggressive when you stay calm? They repeat themselves, they talk louder, push harder, and become increasingly emotional. They're not becoming stronger, they're becoming lost. They're trying to locate your emotional trigger and failing. Machiavelli understood that uncertainty creates respect in a way explanations never can. The man who constantly explains himself teaches others how to pressure him. The man who constantly defends himself teaches others where he's vulnerable. The man who constantly reacts teaches others exactly which buttons work. But the man who remains measured, he becomes difficult to map, and what cannot be mapped cannot be easily manipulated. Now here's where most men misunderstand this principle. Neutrality is not suppression, it's containment. There's a difference. Suppression means pretending you don't feel. Containment means refusing to let your feelings make decisions for you. You still feel anger, you still feel disappointment, you still feel attraction, you still feel betrayal. You simply refuse to display the full blueprint to everyone watching. Because not everyone deserves access to your internal world. And here's the irony. The less desperate you are to display emotion, the more powerful your emotions become when you finally choose to express them. Your words carry weight, your silence carries weight, even your presence carries weight. Because people know they are seeing something intentional, not impulsive. That's what Machiavelli understood. The strongest position isn't emotional numbness. It's emotional sovereignty. The ability to feel deeply without becoming predictable, the ability to remain calm while others reveal themselves, the ability to keep your inner world protected while everyone else is broadcasting theirs for free. When you stop offering emotional handles, manipulative people eventually move on. The cost becomes too high. The reward becomes too low. And that's the quiet victory most people never see. Number 5, remove yourself from linear thinking. This is where most men lose battles they never even knew they were fighting, because they think life works like a straight line. Someone attacks, you defend. Someone pressures, you respond. Someone creates a problem, you solve it. Simple, logical, predictable, and that's exactly why it fails. Machiavelli understood something that most people never see. The smartest manipulators don't win because they're stronger. They win because they're playing a different game. While you're focused on the move directly in front of you, they're shaping the environment around the move. While you're trying to answer the question, they're deciding which question gets asked. While you're defending your position, they're quietly changing the battlefield itself. And if you've ever walked away from a situation thinking, I did everything right, so why did I still lose? This is probably why. Think about the office. A colleague spreads subtle doubt about you, nothing dramatic, nothing you can directly confront. Just small comments, tiny suggestions, little seeds planted over time. You respond with facts, you explain yourself, you defend your reputation. But notice what's happening. You're fighting the accusation, they're influencing perception. Different battlefield, different game. And perception almost always moves faster than explanation. This is why so many intelligent men get trapped. They're solving the visible problem while ignoring the invisible structure underneath it. Machiavelli would tell you that the presented conflict is often the distraction. The real conflict exists one layer deeper. Always ask yourself, what is this situation actually trying to force me into? Because that's usually where the trap is hiding. Maybe someone is trying to force an emotional reaction. Maybe they're trying to force urgency. Maybe they're trying to force a public response. Maybe they're trying to force you onto terrain that benefits them. The average man asks, how do I respond? The strategic man asks, why do they need me to respond at all? That question changes everything. Because suddenly you stop seeing events as isolated incidents. You start seeing patterns, structures, incentives, power plays. You begin noticing how people manufacture urgency to steal your ability to think, how they create emotional pressure to force quick decisions, how they provoke reactions because reactions make you predictable. And predictable men are easy to control. One of the most powerful lessons Machiavelli understood is that timing is often more important than force. Most people lose because they accept the timeline they're given. The demand for an immediate answer, the pressure for an immediate decision, the expectation of an immediate reaction. But who decided that timeline? Who benefits from the urgency? Usually, not you. And that's why stepping sideways is often more powerful than stepping forward. Instead of arguing, you delay. Instead of defending, you observe. Instead of reacting, you reposition. Instead of entering the frame, you change the frame. Most people can't do this. Their emotions won't let them. Their ego won't let them. Their need to be understood won't let them. So they walk directly into battles designed by someone else. Machiavelli knew something ruthless about power. The highest level of control isn't winning the game. It's making the game irrelevant. Think about that. Anyone can fight. Anyone can argue. Anyone can defend. Very few men can alter the environment so completely that the original conflict loses meaning. That's what layered thinking does. You stop seeing individual moves, you start seeing systems. You stop chasing outcomes, you start shaping conditions. You stop being dragged into every conflict, you start choosing which conflicts deserve your energy. And that is where real leverage begins. Because dirty players depend on narrow thinking. They need you focused on the immediate problem. The moment your perspective expands, their advantage starts collapsing. The moment you stop reacting in straight lines, you become difficult to predict. And the moment you become difficult to predict, the game stops being theirs. Number 6, master the art of strategic absence. Most men are terrified of becoming invisible, and that's exactly why they become forgettable. Think about it. They answer every message, show up to every invitation, make themselves available to everyone, explain every decision, defend every misunderstanding. They believe constant presence creates importance, but reality is far more brutal than that. What is constantly available is rarely valued. What is scarce becomes significant. Machiavelli understood a truth that most people spend their entire lives fighting against. Power is not built only by what you do. It's built by what you refuse to give away. Your attention, your energy, your availability, your presence. Especially your presence. Because presence is currency, and most men spend it like they're rich when they're actually bankrupt. Have you ever noticed what happens when a man becomes too available? At first people appreciate it, then they expect it, then they demand it. Then they stop respecting it. It's the same cycle every time. The friend who always says yes, the employee who is always reachable, the man who immediately responds, the man who is always there. People don't see dedication. They see predictability. And predictable things lose value. This is why strategic absence is so powerful. Not because it manipulates people, but because it exposes reality. Let's be honest. Most men are addicted to being needed. That's the uncomfortable truth. They complain about being used while secretly enjoying the validation that comes with being constantly required. They say they're tired. They say they're overwhelmed. Yet the moment people stop calling, stop texting, stop seeking them out, anxiety appears. Why? Because now they're forced to face a question they've been avoiding. Do people value me, or do they only value my availability? That's a dangerous question, because sometimes the answer hurts. Machiavelli understood that distance reveals truths proximity hides. When you step back, masks start slipping. The woman who claims she respected you suddenly loses interest when access becomes limited. The friend who called you a brother disappears when convenience disappears. The coworker who constantly relied on your help becomes frustrated when your time is no longer free. And that's valuable information, painful, but valuable, because strategic absence acts like a filter. It separates appreciation from dependency, respect from convenience, genuine connection from opportunism. And here's where most men get this wrong. They think strategic absence means playing games. It doesn't. It means reclaiming ownership of your attention. There's a difference. You're not disappearing to create anxiety. You're disappearing to create clarity, for them and for yourself. Because something interesting happens when you stop constantly exposing yourself to noise. Your mind gets quieter. You begin seeing patterns. You notice who only contacts you when they need something. You notice who reaches out when there's nothing to gain. You notice which relationships survive distance and which ones collapse under it. Suddenly, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Machiavelli knew that uncertainty creates gravity. When people always know where you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and what you'll do next, there's no intrigue, no weight, no psychological space. But when your movements become intentional rather than automatic, something changes. Your words carry more impact. Your presence carries more authority. Your absence starts speaking before you do. And that's where leverage begins, not through force, not through confrontation, not through demanding respect, through scarcity, through selectivity, through discipline. Because the strongest man in the room isn't the one constantly seeking attention. It's the one who doesn't need it. The man who can walk away. The man who can remain silent. The man who understands that attention given too freely becomes invisible. Machiavelli would tell you that strategic absence is not about disappearing from the world. It's about refusing to make yourself endlessly available to it. And when you master that, people stop taking your presence for granted, because they know it is a choice, not an entitlement. Number 7, control the frame before you control the outcome. This is one of the most dangerous lessons Machiavelli ever understood, because most men think power comes from winning. It doesn't. Power comes from deciding what winning means before the game even starts. Think about it. Have you ever walked into a conversation feeling confident, only to leave feeling like you were defending yourself the entire time? You thought you were discussing facts, but you weren't. You were trapped inside someone else's frame. And the moment that happens, you're already behind. Because people rarely fight over reality. They fight over interpretation. The strongest person in the room is often not the loudest, not the smartest, not even the most respected. It's the person controlling the meaning of events, the person deciding how others see what is happening. That's the frame. And most men surrender it without realizing it. A woman calls your boundaries insecurity. A coworker calls your ambition selfishness. A friend calls your distance arrogance. Notice what just happened. Nothing about your behavior changed, only the interpretation changed. Yet suddenly you're tempted to explain yourself, to defend yourself, to justify yourself. And that's the trap. Because the moment you start defending yourself inside their narrative, you've accepted their authority to define reality. Machiavelli would tell you something most people never learn. The man who is constantly explaining himself is usually losing status in real time. Why? Because explanations signal that you're negotiating your own identity, and identity should never be negotiated. Look at powerful people throughout history. They were criticized, misunderstood, attacked, labeled, but they rarely spent their lives chasing approval. They kept moving, and eventually, reality framed them better than words ever could. That's what weak men don't understand. Arguments rarely change frames. Behavior does. Results do. Consistency does. Imagine two men walking into a room. One immediately starts proving himself, talking about his accomplishments, explaining his value, trying to establish authority. The other says very little, observes, moves with certainty, never rushes, never seeks validation. Who feels more powerful? Exactly. Because frames begin before words, they begin in energy, pacing, posture, restraint. The neediness to be understood is often louder than actual speech, and people feel it immediately. That's why manipulative individuals constantly try to frame you emotionally. They want you angry, defensive, reactive, frustrated, because emotional men are easier to position. The moment they control your emotional state, they start controlling the frame. And once they control the frame, controlling the outcome becomes easier. This is why composure is such a weapon. Not because it looks impressive, because it creates uncertainty. When people can't emotionally move you, they begin questioning their own position. They push harder, talk louder, escalate, reveal themselves. And every escalation gives you information. Machiavelli understood that calmness under pressure is not merely self-control. It's strategic ambiguity. Nobody knows exactly where they stand with you. Nobody knows exactly what you're thinking. Nobody knows exactly how much influence they have over you, and uncertainty creates gravity. Now here's the deeper layer most men miss. Frames aren't only external, they're internal. If rejection becomes proof you're unworthy, you've accepted a frame. If failure becomes proof you're incapable, you've accepted a frame. If criticism becomes proof you're wrong, you've accepted a frame. Strong men don't interpret events that way. They see feedback, data, information, nothing more, nothing less. Because the man who controls his internal frame becomes incredibly difficult to manipulate externally. He doesn't need approval. He doesn't need validation. He doesn't need everyone to understand him. He understands himself. And that creates a kind of quiet power that cannot be faked. Remember this: whoever controls the frame controls perception. Whoever controls perception controls decisions. And whoever controls decisions often controls outcomes before the conflict even begins. You didn't come this far to remain the same man, and deep down, you know it. Something shifted while you were listening, not the kind of shift that makes people clap for you, not the kind you post online, not the kind that gets instant validation. The dangerous kind, the invisible kind, the kind that happens when a man suddenly realizes he has been looking at the world through the wrong lens for years. Maybe that's why some parts of this video felt uncomfortable, because somewhere along the way, you recognized yourself. Not the version of yourself you show the world, the private version, the one that kept giving explanations to people who never intended to understand, the one that kept offering loyalty to people who only offered convenience, the one that kept reacting, defending, proving, chasing clarity, chasing respect, chasing certainty. And if we're being honest, how much energy did that cost you? How many sleepless nights? How many conversations replayed in your head? How many times did you sit alone wondering why your good intentions weren't enough? That's the illusion most men never escape. They believe the world rewards sincerity. They believe effort automatically creates respect. They believe being right guarantees victory. Then reality arrives, and reality is colder than that. Reality rewards positioning. Reality rewards awareness. Reality rewards the man who understands human nature without becoming its victim. That's what Machiavelli understood, and that's what most people spend their entire lives refusing to see. Power isn't about controlling others. That's what amateurs believe. Power begins when others lose the ability to control you. Your attention, your reactions, your need for approval, your fear of rejection, your addiction to being understood. Because once those chains break, something strange happens. The game changes. Actually, no, the game stays exactly the same. You simply begin seeing it for what it always was. You start noticing how desperately people seek validation, how often they reveal themselves without realizing it, and how many decisions are driven by fear, how many relationships are built on convenience, and how many displays of confidence are actually negotiations for approval. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's why some people will become uncomfortable around you after this. Not because you've become aggressive, not because you've become arrogant, and not because you've become cold, but because you're no longer available for the same forms of control. You stop reacting on command, you stop explaining yourself endlessly, and you stop volunteering your inner world to people who haven't earned access to it. And for some people, that change feels threatening. Let it. Not every door is meant to stay open. Not every relationship is meant to survive your growth, and not every person deserves unlimited access to the man you're becoming. Machiavelli knew that strength rarely announces itself. The strongest men in history weren't constantly proving who they were. They moved with certainty, they observed more than they spoke, and they understood more than they revealed. And while everyone else was chasing attention, they were building influence. Quietly, patiently, relentlessly. So as this video comes to an end, remember this. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. And you don't need to chase every opportunity to prove your worth. The moment you understand that, something powerful happens. You stop performing, you start positioning, and positioning is where real power begins. Because men who are obsessed with proving themselves remain trapped inside other people's perceptions. But men who understand positioning create realities that perceptions eventually have to follow. That's the difference. One chases recognition, the other becomes impossible to ignore. And once you understand that distinction, you're no longer playing by the rules. You're becoming the man who decides which rules matter. If this video changed the way you see people, subscribe, because what we've uncovered today is only the surface. And the deeper you understand human nature, the less human nature can be used against you.